Okay, so it was like 30 years ago when I was last in, we called it chapel at Lipscomb. And I spoke in chapel here 30 years ago as a senior, and it's a delight to be back. Things are very different, okay? First of all, y'all got a lot younger. Either that or I got a lot older. I'm not sure which one it is. But I will tell you this, everything I needed to know about life in chapel, I learned in a song when I was, okay, how old were we when we learned the song, This Little Light of Mine? I'm going to let it shine. How, 5? Oh, she beat you. She did it in 4. Anybody beat 4? Okay, that song has taken me to the age of 50. And I'm absolutely convinced that the goal in my life is to try to reflect Jesus in every corner that I can. Now, here I am. I'm a trial lawyer, and trial lawyers have a reputation of not even knowing how to spell Jesus, much less not following him. And yet, it is what I do and my goal of life each day. So, I have 2 things for you. First of all, I have my Road to Jericho story, and then second, I have my story of the world beyond, which will be in Guatemala. My Road to Jericho story is brief. If you remember the story of the man walking on the way to Jericho, and the fella had been beaten and left for dead there on the road to Jericho, and the priests passed by and the devout people passed by, and only the good Samaritans stopped to help him. I was told that that story is significant in part by one of my Bible teachers here, significant in part because it calls upon us in our road that we're walking every day, just doing what we're doing, to try to see the way to serve God by helping others. And so it's something that we've always tried to do, and that I've personally, it's been a personal prayer of mine each day. God, in whatever I do today, who you put in the road in front of me to help, I pray that I will help them and be the light that shines in their life, and that I'll help them in the name of Jesus. So, for example, when I had a case involving this little girl, she was 7 years old. Her name was Regina. She lived in Boston. Regina went down in the basement one day and found her mother hanging by an electrical cord. Her mother had committed suicide in the basement, and 7-year-old Regina found her. Her mother had been on a medicine for an experimental drug for back pain that no one ever explained also causes you to, it increases your desires. What it does, it fries that part of your brain that says don't kill yourself, okay? And so they have multiple suicides on this drug, including this 7-year-old's mother, which left her in the care of her father. Her father was well known about town as the local drug dealer. He dealt drugs the way a paper boy deals newspapers. I mean, every house he could, he would take the drugs to them. He would deliver them on the front porch. He would wrap them if it was raining. Anything he could do. He was in and out of jails. And this 7-year-old girl who had lost her mother, her brother was a drug dealer as well. He was following the footsteps of Dad. She had a grandmother who had raised her mom, but there was a sordid tale there as well. So here we are. We represent this little girl, and the question is, what can I do for her? And I thought, the last thing in the world she needs is a bunch of money that her dad will take and turn into more drug dealing. The only way to help that girl was one that didn't really involve that much legal work. It involved more than legal work, getting someone to oversee her growing up and her development and getting her out of that situation where she was. So I turned from being lawyer for her to being social worker for her. But it was the right thing to do, even though it didn't turn it into a money-making venture for the law firm. It certainly tried to change that girl's life. I got a card from her 2 days ago that told me 5 years later, it's been an amazing journey for her and she's doing real well. Well, that's the road to Jericho. That's what happens when you just are trying to shine your light all day long wherever you are. But the second story I want to tell you is that beyond the road to Jericho, there is a world outside. And because of the internet and because of the age in which we live, even though you don't see what's out there, it's still part of your road. It's still something that you can have something to do with. So Becky and I got started in Guatemala. We got started because we were helping a young boy named Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia lived in a mountain town, and we were helping him through one of these mission efforts that we'd never contacted. I mean, look, we don't know the people who run the mission effort. We just have been told, hey, give us $21 a month. You adopt a kid in Guatemala. You make sure he gets an education or she gets an education. They get some food and they get clothing. And it's in a Christian environment. So we said, okay, well, we'll do that. And the whole time, one of the two of us, I won't say which one because I don't want to embarrass Becky, my wife, but one of the two of us was a little bit more cynical than the other one. So we had an opportunity to go down to Guatemala, and my wife, who's fluent in Spanish, said, this is our chance. And I said, what? She said, our chance to see if that $21 a month goes to anybody for real, or if we need to find another way to help those people in Guatemala. And I said, okay, well, let's do that. So we contacted the ministry. They said, oh, we'd love you to meet this boy that you've been getting cards from and pictures of for the last several years. So we went down, and he had to take mountain buses. It took him 8 hours to get to us. But 8 hours later, we meet this 11-year-old boy who was just a phenomenal young man, alive, educated, and loving Jesus, with clothes on his back and shoes on his feet. We said, tell us about your family. He had 3 sisters, I think, and a mother and a father. He said, well, we would like to send you back with some gifts for your family. What do you think your sisters would like? And his response, shoes. Now, we have 4 daughters. When our daughters want shoes, it's like the Tory Burch sandals or something, okay? No, 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 no. Anything that would cover their feet because they have none. Any food that we might send back, because while he got 1 meal a day at school, the Christian school we were working through, his parents and his sisters were not so fortunate. We tried to laden him down with everything we could. We wanted to buy everybody in the village shoes. We wanted to send back a McDonald's franchise in his backpack. Anything we could do to help. And my wife then said, you know, there's so much more we can do. So Becky got very involved with this group in Guatemala called SANA, S-A-N-A. And it's an acronym for those of you who speak Spanish that you would understand. I mess it up every time. But I know in English what it means is that it takes care of the environment, it takes care of nutrition, it takes care of health care and access to education. And in the midst of this group that we've worked hard for a number of years now to try and change the 600,000 starving children in Guatemala, or to try and change a country that wasn't even a democracy until 2 decades ago, and it's a sketchy democracy at best now. A country where the government mass killed in the 1990s, when you were alive, hundreds of thousands of natives. And those that they didn't mass kill with guns, they tried to starve to death and rip out from under them any type of structure that would allow them to continue in the society. Into that, Becky's been very involved with a certain part of the government and working really hard, and it's been such a joy for us to go back and see some schools that are now being built, hospitals and clinics that are being put in these villages where nobody's got any influence, and all because we didn't try to shine the light simply on our road to Jericho, but we tried to look to the world beyond us. I had an opportunity this morning for the first time really to visit in depth with Mark Moore. And Mark's going to come up here and share with you something he's been sharing with me this morning, an amazing effort to let his light shine and the light of Christ shine out into the world in some ways that frankly are mind-boggling, but also may open doors of opportunities for many of us to walk through. And so I want you to hear what Mark has to say, and meanwhile, go Lipscomb.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. The story of 2 Marks, I hope you can hear me just fine. And by the way, thanks, Carter, for leading Free to Dance. I was sitting right next to Dr. Lowry, and apparently that's a policy change here. So you're free to dance, apparently. And at Harding, we weren't. I went to Harding, and we weren't free to dance. In fact, one of the jokes while I was at Harding was that there is a rule at Harding that prohibits kissing your girlfriend while standing up. You know why? Because it could lead to dancing. And nobody wanted that to happen. You know, it's a slippery slope when you get engaged in things like that. So a few of you will get that after a little bit. If you're Church of Christ, you'll really get it. It's really funny, actually. But so I'm a Harding grad, and I met Randy Lowry many years ago. I was on a mission team that went to Uganda in the early 1990s. We stayed for 10 years. And before we went, we figured we might have some conflict. So we brought in the best person we knew who could help us with conflict and spent a whole day with Randy Lowry. I had no idea the gift that was being given to me. I was just a 24-year-old sort of doofus, and I had this really brilliant person in to help us. And so it was a great gift of his to come all the way to Searcy, which doesn't have direct flights coming in. Speaking of direct flights, we came in this morning on the Lanier's plane. They have a plane, and I told Mark, I made a deal with him. If he would fly me in his plane, he could get in my Winnebago. It's a 1971 Winnebago that's parked out front, so it's a good swap. And you're all invited to check out the Winnebago. We bought it on eBay, and it's going across the country, and it's here at Lipscomb today, and it's talking about severe, acute malnutrition. Every 6 seconds, and that was 6 seconds, an awkward pause for a speaker, but every 6 seconds, a child dies from severe acute malnutrition. It is more than malaria, it's more than AIDS, it's more than TB, it's more than all of those things combined. And in those 3 pauses that I gave you, 3 children died of severe acute malnutrition. These are kids under 6. And by the time you're 6, your brain has finished growing. About 95% of your brain growth is done by 6. So if you're struggling as a freshman, here's what you can do. Call your parents. Say, Mom and Dad, it's totally your fault. My brain is apparently not fully developed. I've got 3 Ds, and it's your fault because by 6, there's nothing else I can do. It's too late. It's too late after 6 for your brain to grow anymore. In fact, the first 1,000 days of your life, the first 1,000 days are the most crucial period. UNICEF right now has a big push for the first 1,000 days, and that starts from the time of conception going forth until a baby is about 2 years old. 75% of the brain growth is finished. It's done by that time. And so if you can intervene in a child's life with nutrition, with proper nutrition, you can change everything for them. And if you don't, it's too late. It's too late. It's as simple as that. I came home from Uganda. I went to school in Washington, D.C. for a graduate school, and while I was there, I got a job working in the United States Senate. I was an Africa fellow. I was sitting in the back of the room, and UNICEF came in, and UNICEF was stumping for more money from the U.S. government. My boss at the time was a U.S. senator. She was on the Appropriations Committee. So I'd come a long way from being a missionary in a village, bailing with a teaspoon, to walking around the United States Capitol with a badge and pretending to know something about international development. I was sitting in the back of the room, and this person from UNICEF started talking about ready-to-use therapeutic food, RUTF. And I have a packet of it in my pocket. It's in this pocket. And RUTF looks like this. And you'll get some. It's peanut butter in a pouch. You can come down and try some if you want after chapel. But basically what it is it's peanut butter, micronutrients, a little bit of milk, all in a pouch. That's a metallized polyester pouch. And I was sitting there listening to them talk about this stuff, and I thought, man, if that stuff is as good as they say, somebody ought to do something about this. I went back to my boss, who was the chief of staff at the time, and we were talking, and he said, we need to talk to the Georgia guys. I don't know if anybody here from Georgia, but we went to see Saxby Chambliss and Johnny Isaacson's people. Talked to them about it, and they said, oh, we know a lot about this peanut butter stuff. And over the course of the next 3 or 4 months, I quit my job and started this company called Manna. I knew nothing about peanut butter. I knew nothing about malnutrition. I had lived for a few years, and my wife is an RN, so we dealt with quite a few malnourished kids, whether we knew it or not, in Uganda. But the next slide will show you a little bit more about Manna that I want to show you before my time runs out here. If you've been watching the news, I guess you've seen that there's a famine raging right now in East Africa. Anybody? How many people have seen this? Have you seen this? It's big news. In fact, 8% of the Somali children under 6 have died in the last 100 days. It's phenomenal. Phenomenal death. When we celebrate, or when we bypass, we didn't really celebrate, but when we experienced the anniversary of 9/11, and we thought about the deaths that day, of how terrible that was and how that brought our nation to its knees. Somalia is experiencing a 9/11 every single day with kids. Every day. And if we couldn't do anything about it, then we could say, well, isn't that terrible? But if we can do something about it, and we can do it in a way that is shooting at that problem, not with a shotgun that might hit something, but with a rifle, then we ought to do something about it. And so we started Manna, and what we're doing right now is providing this ready-to-use therapeutic food to the United States government, to UNICEF, who has big budgets for this stuff. And what it's designed to do is to treat those kids who are severely malnourished. Today, you're going to get a chance to grab a MUAC bracelet, and hold your hand up if you're wearing one. There's several people wearing these. Middle upper arm circumference is what that stands for. If you're working in a village in Somalia or in Guatemala or wherever, and you were trying to assess whether a child was severely malnourished, you would measure their middle upper arm, and if it fell into the red zone, which is on my bracelet here, then they would be severely malnourished, and you would treat them with this. So this stuff is not for every hungry kid. Hungry people need better nutrition. They need better gardens, they need better governments, they need all kinds of things. But children who are suffering and diagnosed with severe acute malnutrition need this as the intervention. UNICEF agrees, so does the United Nations Standing Committee on Nutrition, and all of the experts in the world who don't normally agree, by the way, it's not just the church people who don't agree, it's these nutrition people don't agree with one another, but they agree that this is the way, this is the frontline defense. If you Google Anderson Cooper, plumpy nut, or famine, you'll get a story about this that's pretty amazing. And so my question is, we'll show you something like that in chapel. And one of the reasons being up here with Mark is that the story of two Marks. I don't know what your vision is for your life. What are you going to do? What are you majoring in? When you leave this place, how will you go out and impact the world? Will you be a singer? Will you be a songwriter? Will you be an accountant? Will you be a teacher? Will you go to medical school? Will you go to law school? Will you become a missionary? I was talking with TJ beforehand, who's a good friend of mine, and we were talking about missions at Lipscomb. And I want to say I'm so glad you got TJ and others involved who are cool, because when I was involved with missions in college, it was not cool. In fact, one of the things we talked about with missions was, here's my vision for the missions department at Lipscomb, that we could take a big axe and chop the S off the end, because missions is for like boring old guys. But mission is something that Mark Lanier wakes up with every day, and that a good teacher in the inner city schools of Nashville wakes up with every day. And that your professors, the ones who care, they wake up with it every day. And you, if you leave this place with a mission, with a passion, with a vision, not to look like every other missionary, you don't have to move to Uganda, you don't have to make peanut butter, and you don't have to be a lawyer, but you can look at the diversity of people who say, I live my life with a mission and a passion and a vision for serving Christ. That's what I'm about. That's what Lipscomb's about. If not, you're paying way too much money to have to go to chapel. There are cheaper schools, if you haven't noticed. But what they've decided to do here is to say, I want, when you leave this school, to leave here with a sense of mission and vision. Check out the next slide. This is hometown, Murray, Kentucky. We were just talking earlier of, who was it? Who was from Murray? Keela's from Murray, Kentucky. We bought this thing on eBay. It's a 1971 Winnebago. It's right within our budget. Probably paid too much for it. Then we turned Alex and Mark, guys, stand up. These two mustachioed characters here. And everything your mother ever told you about not trusting a guy with a mustache and a Winnebago has come true today, girls. Stay away from these guys, is what your mother would say. They're here on campus, and malnutrition is not fun. It's not cool. It's not cute. It's not something to laugh about. But we figured if we showed up in a 71 Winnebago with an 8-track player, you couldn't resist at least checking out the 8-track player. You can go to their blog right now and check out 8-track of the day. There's some cool stuff. And look at here's the Winnebago site. Check this out. There it is, and some of the places that they're going. We went to Harding University, my alma mater, the first day, and it was crazy. Students just poured out. We have a therapeutic feeding center. They walk through the feeding center. They put on bracelets. And we've had an outpouring. The Harding football team is eating manna. By the way, Lipscomb football team's still undefeated, right? It's like 20 years. 20 years going undefeated. The Harding football team, which is not undefeated, is eating this stuff to gain weight, and they are going to contribute at their football game. There's all kinds of creative ideas Alex and Mark have been here earlier and have told people about some of the opportunities. So check this out. Here's what I would say. Harding is this podunk school in the middle of nowhere in Searcy, Arkansas. Come on. They can't beat you. You have to be better than them, and they were amazing. So what we are going to challenge you with today is this simple thing, this MUAC bracelet. And sometimes we give them away, but I want to challenge you to give us $1 for one. That way we don't just spread them out everywhere. So come give us $1 and say, I'm going to wear that thing. And if you wear it, you can go with the green level. Here's the green level of the MUAC bracelet. This middle upper arm circumference, right? These are the real deal. This is what they use in the village in Ethiopia and other places to measure kids. Green is this. Where did you get that bracelet? What's your name? Sarah, where'd you get that bracelet? And Sarah says, I don't know, there's some guy in chapel, he had peanut butter, I don't remember really, I was studying. I was surfing the web while he was talking. But I put it on anyway, and I'm gonna just tell people the story. There's their website right on that, check it out, Manna Nutrition. The next thing is the yellow level, this is more serious. Yellow level says this, I'm gonna wear this thing for 6 weeks. Mine's been on, Alex and Mark can say that you take showers in these things and they look pretty rough. But 6 weeks is this, skip a latte, skip a meal, and over 6 weeks you can save a kid's life. And you can pray over this bracelet, and people can ask you, why are you wearing that bracelet? And you can say, this is some bracelet, I forgot the name, from Africa, and peanut butter saves kids in Africa, and I am skipping 3 lattes a week, and over the course of 6 weeks, I'm gonna save a life because it's $60. And then the red level is this. Some of you will go crazy at the red level. This is the Avon Lady Mary Kay cosmetic level, to where it's embarrassing. It's ruining relationships in your life. People see you coming, they're like, oh, she's gonna talk about starving kids, I hate this. But you're gonna say, not just me, but my club. My school, my church, my high school, somebody is gonna get engaged because children are dying. And I wanna do something about it. And you can squeeze this stuff, you can taste this stuff, you can come by the Manna and check it out. I'll show you the last slide here. These are the results. This is a study in Rwanda that we did. This is Dominique. If you were able to go down to Fitzgerald, Georgia, which is where our factory is, you could see this picture really big hanging out front, and we named the big bay doors after Dominique. She was saved by manna. This is her in January of this year, weighing 4.7 kilograms. She is severely, acutely malnourished. Here's what clinical trials say about kids who are suffering from SAM. Dominique, on the left there, if untreated, the odds of her living, 10%. She's got a 90% death rate of kids who are severely malnourished. But look at her 6 weeks later. She is fat. She has gained a ton of weight here, something none of us want to do. And look at her mom. Look at the transformation in her mom. That's what Manna can do, and that's what RUTF can do, and that's how you can get engaged. It's a simple thing. It's peanut butter and powdered milk and micronutrients. It's not rocket science. And you could play a role with Manna. The last thing I'll say is this. UNICEF is struggling to feed the world right now. And there are more Christians in the world than there are Chinese people. Did you know that? There are more Christians in the world than there are Indians. There are more Christians in the world than there are Indians and Chinese combined. And we started with 12. That's pretty darn good. And my question is this: there are 1 billion hungry people in the world. And we're the biggest group in the world. God has empowered us, especially in this country, with the resources and with the wealth to do something about it, And you can do it. It doesn't have to be UNICEF, it doesn't have to be the US government, but it could be you and your club and your church and your school, or maybe just you with a couple lattes and saying, I want to do that. I'm going to claim that, and I'm going to save a life. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to speak here at Lipscomb. I think TJ is going to wrap it up, or Dr. Lowry is going to wrap it up with the final prayer. But thanks for the opportunity, and please come see the Manna and the Therapeutic Feeding Center, which will be on the lawn today.